Ah, high school, where theater kids were popular and the basketball players danced and sang. Wait, your high school experience wasn't like that? Hey, you crazy kids, and welcome to Voices in My Closet, the show that you listen to during your lonely drives. I hope you all had a nice week. I am currently suffering from a broken air conditioner right now at my house, and I'm just trying to keep myself cool. I have some ice cream here that I'm probably going to eat a little bit between breaks, but I also don't really have, there's really no point in opening any windows either or opening the closet door because there is no air circulating anywhere because outside it's 90 degrees and here it's 85. It's slightly cooler, but it's not doing anything for me. So with all of these lights on me, I'm going to talk as efficiently as I can and hopefully do all of this in one take. And I'm just rambling now. But I wanted to personally thank Aaron on Twitter for giving this suggestion for a topic because we're winding down the end of the school year, and he thought it would be a good idea to talk about my own high school experiences, the classes that I took and all the different stuff that went down when I was in high school. So I thought maybe this would be a good time to bore you all to tears, whether or not you are ending school in the next month or so, or if you want to reminisce about high school. I won't bore you to tears. My life wasn't that boring in high school, but you might be able to relate to some unfortunate or boring parts. So it'll all be good. It'll be educational if I am allowed to say that without anybody groaning. So go ahead, sit back and relax, and I'm going to retell you the story of my high school years. High school is supposed to be the time where people think, okay, I'm wiser. I'm about to go into the world after these 4 years, and I'm going to be ready for anything that comes my way. That's what you're thinking when you're starting high school. It's not always the case, and it definitely wasn't the case for me, because when I was in middle school, I was great in middle school. Middle school was great for me, and aside from excessive bullying in 8th grade, my grade point average was great. My friends were great, and I thought this is going to be an amazing experience because I'm going to get to start fresh as a freshman and experience all these great things, learn a lot more about the world, and, well, turns out that just because your grade point average is great in middle school doesn't mean it's going to be great in high school. Even if I started out taking honors classes in 8th grade does not necessarily mean as a freshman, honors classes are going to be a breeze for me, and they weren't, especially physical science and geometry. I took honors physical science, honors geometry. Both classes I did terrible in, especially science. Science, I don't know what it was. Science was my favorite subject up until freshman year of high school. I don't want to talk too much about my personal experiences with the teachers because I feel like I would just be ragging on them, and I don't want to do that. But I did appreciate my teachers, and I appreciated their patience with me. It's just the fact that I couldn't learn the way that they taught, and I guess I hit a wall at some point, and I wasn't doing that great. And sorry, I'm wiping some sweat from my face because it's already happening. But I hit a wall, and science became a lot more difficult for me. I barely got by with a B in the class. I know some of you are rolling your eyes, but I started out with C's in that class for actually. Yeah, no, I can't remember now. I'm having flashbacks to middle school now too because I did terrible back then at one point when I was in 5th grade, but I'm going back too far. But I did have a C and a D score for a while, a D grade for a while in physical science, and my parents weren't having it, and I didn't want to have it either. It's just when I was in middle school, I didn't have to study. Like I got straight A's and I didn't have to study even in the advanced classes that I took. I was placed in higher classes. So I didn't really develop the habit, and I was kicking myself for a good portion of my high school career, not being able to focus as much as I should have been able to. So physical science and math were difficult freshman year. The one thing that kept me going through all years was definitely choir. I had the fortune of being asked to be in the higher level choir. That's where my sisters were at the time. They were 2 grades ahead of me. This was the only co-ed choir that we had, males and females, and this was a great opportunity for me because I was in just the male choir freshman year with every other guy, and only the people who take choir very seriously are considered for the co-ed choir. So I was asked mostly because our director did not have enough basses, and I sing bass. For those of you that don't know, bass is the lowest male singing part. So I was really happy to join, and I was very happy that she also asked my best friend to join too, because he was a bass, and that's what was the most exciting thing for me, being able to be part of the choir, the co-ed choir, because we did some chamber music and we also did some show tunes. We were kind of like a show choir almost too, kind of like a hybrid. And it was, even though I didn't know anybody there except my sisters and some of their friends, it was still a great experience for me. And that kind of took away some of the edge and some of the stress from all the classes that I wasn't doing so well in. Namely, it was really just physical science and math. Fast forward to sophomore year. Sophomore year wasn't that much better because I was still in science. I mean, I took biology my second year and I was a lot better at biology. Like, I remember the first A that I got was the most surprising thing to me ever because I didn't expect to get any good grades in that class. And I enjoyed biology a little bit more. In my sophomore year, I was in Algebra 2. After geometry comes Algebra 2. And I did about the same, maybe not as bad, but not great still. I still managed to get out of that class with a B. Still nothing that really kept me going other than choir. I wasn't involved in a lot of extracurriculars. I always thought about joining a sport because I was in sports in middle school, and I also did rec soccer up until I was 18, but all I knew, I was actually playing soccer. I don't know why couldn't have remembered this, but I played soccer my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And compared to the other guys, I was terrible because I wasn't one of the guys that played travel since I was 5 years old. I started out playing soccer when I was maybe 12, and I only did rec league, and that was for a couple months every summer. And there's not much that you can learn from that because really it's a kind of like a for fun league. You don't get really competitive. You're not traveling across the state to do different tournaments and stuff. It's just you have 1 or 2 games every week for it's about 2 months, about a 2 month period. So not really exciting. Well, it was exciting for me, but it wasn't exciting trying to translate that to high school soccer because high school soccer was so much more intense. And the conditioning that we had to do, all the training that we had to do the summer beforehand, it was made me miserable. I didn't like it, and I knew I wasn't really motivated to get any better. And while I did improve a lot in rec soccer because of what I learned in high school soccer, I didn't really improve much in high school soccer. I stayed in JV both my freshman and sophomore year, and after that, I knew that my parents wanted me to get better at it, but I just had no motivation for it. And I still love playing soccer. It's just I kick myself, pun intended, I kick myself for not keeping up with soccer. But at the same time, I think it might have been the right move for me because when I was in my sophomore year, considering playing soccer again for another year, I just thought I'm going to be in junior varsity again. I don't want to do that. They're not going to let me play varsity. There's no way unless I start training by myself, and I didn't really want to do that. And I noticed a lot of attention from my friend group was on the speech and debate team, and I thought, okay, well, what is this thing? So they're always practicing out in the hallway in the English hallway where most of the English teachers are, and also the other language teachers. So I would watch them sometimes after school. And that's sort of where I got the idea in my head that I really wanted to do speech and debate. And I won't talk a lot about that because I think I could dedicate an entire episode to speech and debate. But the thing that I decided was, this is really entertaining because it wasn't just debate. It was other categories that were more humorous. And I thought this is something that I could see myself doing. So I used that as my excuse to get out of playing soccer. And I was completely fine with that. I didn't want to be in soccer anymore, and speech and debate was such a big change of pace, and that was something else that sort of gave me a drive during school because I could practice on my breaks during school and I could also practice after school. But I ended up auditioning at the end of my sophomore year for the following season's speech team. And what I did was I did a piece from the movie The Princess Bride, which is my favorite movie of all time. And I turned out to do well enough that I was asked to be on the team. And my junior and senior year were very much devoted to speech and debate, along with choir. And I also ended up joining drama club too, starting sophomore year into my junior year, where I was in West Side Story. And I know I've talked about this stuff before too, so I won't get into that. But all these things, these extracurriculars, I never thought of myself getting involved in extracurriculars other than the sports that I was already in. So this was completely different for me because I didn't know exactly where I fit in. But these places, I really felt like I fit in. And I was meeting people who were similar to me in personality and even stranger than I was, but in a good way. So it was really sort of an uplifting thing for me. So after sophomore year, though, things started to get a little more difficult. When I say difficult, it was really a culmination of things that made junior year a little bit tougher for me because, of course, at the beginning I was taking honors math classes still. I hadn't stopped that, and I actually think this one was called advanced math. It was really just an honors trigonometry class, but I did better at it than geometry my freshman year, probably on par with Algebra 2 my sophomore year, but I still wasn't that great with it. Other than that, my science ship had completely sailed. I was done taking honors science courses. I just decided to take a regular level chemistry course, and I was so much more at home with that. I understood it all, and I felt fine in the class. I felt smarter, which is what I wanted to feel. So I got a little enjoyment out of science before the end of that. And other than those two classes, I had to start thinking about college, and my parents kind of put that on me to think more about what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, and I don't blame them for that because I should have been thinking about it from the start. I just wanted to hold it off as long as possible. So I had to think about, well, what do I want to do? I thought, I liked to build. I liked to build stuff when I was younger. I built with Legos and cardboard and all this stuff that I could find around the house. So maybe I want to go into architecture because that kind of translates, right? So I ended up going to sign up for an architectural drafting elective class, which I didn't last 2 weeks because I was bored to tears. I did not enjoy it at all. It was just not something that was my area of enjoyment. I thought, I can't make this into a job, and while I know that it's good pay and all of that, I know that I'm not going to enjoy it because it applies stuff that I just don't enjoy doing in school, so I'm not going to enjoy it in life. I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And kudos to any of those people who are into architecture or who are architects or who are studying to be architects. Props to you because it's not for me, but I know that a lot of people get a lot of fulfillment out of it. They've gotten a lot of great experience out of it. It just wasn't the thing. It wasn't where my place was. So in that point, I still didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. But speech and debate and choir kind of got me on the right track. With choir, I thought maybe I should do vocal performance, but that quickly dissolved because I realized that there's not really any good job security with vocal performance because you can't really stick in a job for too long. Plus, you also have to be the best of the best, which I knew I was not. So that ship sailed also, and speech and debate sort of got me into the idea of communication studies, but that's a story for another time if I haven't already talked about it, which I think I have. But besides talking about my classes and thinking about college, I was also in the dating scene too. I wasn't allowed to date actually until I was 16. I don't know how many of you, I don't think anybody knows that actually. So cue the laugh track. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to date until I was 16. It was a rule with my parents, and I think it was actually good in retrospect because it gave me the opportunity to view relationships from a different perspective, to see how people were treated and how they treated their significant others. And it made me get a feel for what a mature relationship is compared to an immature relationship. And I think if I had started dating any earlier, I would not have had a great perspective. So I thank my parents for setting that rule for me and my siblings. I think it definitely benefited me a lot, despite currently being single and not being great with relationships. But that's a personal episode for another time. I won't talk about that. At the end of junior year, things started trickling into senior year and sort of giving indication that things would become more difficult. I was still focusing a lot on choir and drama club and Spanish, not Spanish class. I was taking Spanish class, speech and debate. And I decided that that's where I wanted to keep my focus, but I couldn't because I still had one more year left. So towards the end of junior year, I ended up signing up for AP English, and I was taking an honors English course during the time, and I was doing pretty well in it. I had an A, and I was doing fine. The only thing that I wasn't great at was writing, specifically expository and research style writing. I was fine with creative stuff. I loved creative writing, and I always got decent marks for that, but my teacher was very reluctant to give me a pass to take AP English because she had always criticized my work, and I know she's on Twitter and Facebook, so she might see that. I don't know if she probably won't see this, but I do appreciate her criticism because it definitely encouraged me to work harder when I did take AP English. But fast forward now to senior year. Backtracking to the summer before my senior year, I was given summer reading assignments for AP English, and I was also given, I think, in the last week before classes started, assignments for AP Calculus. Yes, I ended up taking another advanced math course, which don't know why I was putting myself through that again, but I ended up waiting last minute for both of these to finish the assignments, which is already just not a good indicator for me for what my senior year was going to be like, and it was all because of my own decisions. So for AP English, I did do well in the class, but I wasn't a huge fan of a lot of the content, and I hope my English teacher then doesn't hear about any of this, but I was never a fan of the books like Dr. Faustus and A Picture of Dorian Gray and Heart of Darkness and Beowulf. And I was more into the fantasy and sci-fi stuff, the kind of stuff that English curriculum never allows you to read. So while I didn't enjoy that stuff, I did manage to improve my writing. While I wasn't still not that great at expository and research writing, I did improve a lot with it. And even in that class, I had friends who I didn't really feel as much shame going to ask for help. So that was nice. And the same case was for AP Calculus. But unfortunately for AP Calculus, about halfway through the year, I ended up with a D in the class, and my parents kind of held it over my head and said, if you can't bring your grade up, you can't do speech and debate. And I panicked because we had a big tournament coming up in just 2 weeks, and I told my coach about it, and I told my speech partner about it, and neither of them were having it. So I put extra focus in my homework and in studying, and I went in for tutoring, and I ended up bringing that grade miraculously up to a B-, and that was the most magical moment of my life. It felt like a miracle. It was the hardest I think I had ever worked in AP Calculus in such a short span of time. So I was able to get back into speech and debate, and it's funny what motivates you to do what you're passionate about. And I think that's kind of where I realized, that high school doesn't really prepare you for college in that way with the courses that you take, with the Common Core, or whatever they call it these days. They say that middle school is supposed to prepare you for high school is supposed to prepare you for college, but really, things got a lot more difficult that I was not prepared for high school. I don't think I was prepared at all for high school from middle school. And for high school, I think I actually was over prepared for college, because in college, everything was so much easier. I understood things more. And I think it was also because I was pursuing a degree in something that I was passionate about. It was something that I really enjoyed, and I was taking classes that I wanted to take, not necessarily that I was required. Well, there were requirements, but they were the requirements that I wanted to take. So With high school, I think if you take anything out of this episode, I think it would be to take extracurriculars, take electives, take things that aren't part of the Common Core of English and science and a language and math, any of those, because I think you'll get a better idea of what your passion is, and maybe your passion is one of those subjects, which is great. But other than that, other than the regular classes you have to take, I mean, I found a lot of fulfillment out of choir and, even my Spanish class that I took for 4 years. We got the chance to go out during school hours and teach Spanish to third graders, which was a great way for me to get my public speaking, my presentation type skills. And that's sort of one of the things that set me up for wanting to go into communication studies in college, because that, with the addition of adding in the speech and debate and also drama club, being in front of people and being able to perform in different ways, I guess, with public speaking and with entertaining, they really prepared me more and helped me to realize exactly what I wanted to pursue for the rest of my life. So if you did miss your chance of taking electives in high school, I hope that you will consider taking them in college. And if you haven't taken them in college and you're an adult now, then go find some kind of young adult group that does stuff together, because that can be a really fun experience. It can be a great hobby for you. It can turn into a career, potentially. You never know. But all of my electives, I think, were what pushed me to find the career that I was destined to be a part of, to get into, which is entertainment of some kind. And while it's currently not my full-time job, it's still something that I'm actively pursuing. So again, take electives. I think if you take your courses and decide that you're already set, you already know what you want to do, then that's great. But if you don't know what you want to do, there's plenty of room for experimentation with electives and with extracurricular activities, with sports, with clubs and organizations. So please consider all of that. I want to thank you for listening and watching this episode. I want to wish the best of luck to all of those who are graduating or finishing up their semesters in general. Anyone who's taking finals, best of luck to all of you. Study hard. If you're not in school right now, I hope I was able to maybe reminisce with some of you a little bit about these experiences. From this, that I wasn't exactly the smartest student. 3.7 GPA, not that great, but for me, it was enough to set me up for college. It was a good indicator. It's like almost over preparing myself, like I said, from high school into college. But I hope that I could relate to some of you on an educational level. I hope this was educational for all of you. Yes, I'm going to use that pun again. So thank you for watching. I hope that you, again, all have a great rest of the semester, rest of the grading period, however you all mention this stuff. If you're already in your summer break, enjoy your summer break. Maybe I'll talk about my college experiences sometime soon. I will see you all next week.